Good afternoon again. Welcome to our Business Agility video podcast. So each week we explore practical business technology topics for business owners. So regarding our format, we'll start with quick introductions from our panelists, and then we'll get pretty much right into our discussion topics for today. The format will be interactive. We encourage you to send your questions. We have both a live audience on our Facebook live stream as well as on our Zoom webinar platform. So again, send us your questions and comments. We will limit it to 30 minutes, so we're going to be wrapped up at 2:30. So today we'll explore the topic, what makes technology dangerous? And we'll explore some examples around it and then get into some strategies of how to evaluate systems, all that kind of stuff, as well as look at stuff that's totally within your control to properly assess and mitigate the danger of some of these technology tools. So with that, let's get right into it, and I'll turn it back to Samantha to kick it off.
Yeah, thanks, Murray. So today we're going to be talking about what makes technology dangerous. And we know on a day-to-day basis that there are so many ways technology can enhance a business. And in our last live podcast, we spoke about the signs that business owners need to see in their business to identify whether or not they need a technology solution in place and use technology to leverage better efficiencies with their operations. So that's what we spoke about last week. And today we're going to talk about the dangers of technology and really breaking that down. So my name is Samantha Knighton DeForge, and I work with Aqurus Solutions as the business specialist.
Hi, and I'm Steve Swenson, and I'm a business consultant with Aqurus Solutions, helping out with implementations and overall pre-sales and business software selection.
Thanks. I'm Murray Quibel. I'm the president of Aqurus Solutions. So we've been working with business technology for way too many years than I care to admit. I'm a chartered accountant by trade, CPA, I guess that would be, and also a specialist in technology. Certainly my spin on things like the dangers of technology. It starts to get into selecting the wrong things for the wrong reasons, but then we'll get into those topics and start to figure out again how to set you on a better path for success and all that.
Yeah, you bet, Murray. So why don't you break it down for everybody? What makes technology dangerous, and what is an example or the definition of dangerous technology?
Yeah, and that's a good place to start, because I think danger can exist with threats to your system, and that's what most people think about. So that might be malware or ransomware, things like that, or security risks and things like that. So I think those are easy things that people think about around technology. And so certainly there are some methodologies to mitigate those kinds of things for sure, and that will be something that kind of we put into a context around what we will evaluate. We're going to spend probably most of our time today talking about maybe not those clear and present dangers like that, but stuff that could sit there and lurk and eventually cause your business to be disrupted, or worse, even can be completely compromised or shut down. And so those are the silent killers. So the technology that maybe you've made a decision that has affected your productivity, but it could be something that, again, doesn't kill your business immediately, but over time, if not addressed, it does have that same potential to be devastating.
Yeah, we like to sometimes even think of that as like a gnawing pain, right? I mean, I always like to use analogies, and I know that a lot of people like that leaky roof analogy that I made, right? Lots of businesses, take a leaky roof, right? You have a leak in your roof, and you just patch it up with duct tape, and the business owner says, oh, you know what? It's just duct tape's really cheap, it's really affordable, it works fine, there's nothing wrong with it. Year later, holes gotten bigger, drywall's starting to rot, business owner goes, you know what, I'm still just gonna keep adding duct tape. It doesn't make sense for me to add anything different, and it's just duct tape's more cheaper. And then, year 3, the roof collapses, and then the business owner goes, you know what, the roof, now it's a full-blown hole, I'm just gonna cover it up with more duct tape. And then you sit there and you go, why wouldn't you just replace the drywall and fix the hole? No, duct tape works good, nothing wrong with it, right? I think that's something we encounter on a daily basis, and like you said, Marie, there's a lot of things that can kill your business, and they can be a cancer. So let's talk, obviously we spoke about ransomware. We want to talk more about the silent killers, but let's talk about a poor business solution in place, right? This is kind of our bread and butter. This is what we specialize in. Couple of variables around this. Steve, what are your thoughts? What do you think is a poor business solution placed in by somebody?
Well, there's a couple of different kinds on that. Uh, a lot of the times it's either you've bought a solution that's too big, and you've bought it because maybe other companies that you know were using it, so you bought it as well, and it's way too big, way too complex for you. Or maybe your business changed over time, and you've got a system that's too big for you. The other one is too small, which is more common. People buy smaller, cheaper systems, similar to the duct tape idea. They're going to go with cheap patches, and they're going to patch little pieces of their business with 5 or 6 little ones. So I know you've had some experience with somebody that had bought a system that was way too big for them.
Yeah, and I hope he's watching this. I really love the analogy he used. He goes, "We bought a Ferrari, and a year and a half later, we don't even have the radio working yet, and that's all we need." And that's a mistake, right? And that was a huge error on their part. They ended up buying a tier 1 level system, and they're a company that I think at that time had like 38 employees or so, right? So
Yeah.
that's a very expensive mistake. Other people I know, there's a company up in Edmonton, I have a couple of friends who work there who, they're about a 1,500 to 1,800 employee company, same thing, have spent millions and millions of dollars implementing a very, very large system. So I think this is definitely the bread and butter. I mean, as far as small goes, Murray, what do you think?
I think that, yeah, so small, if you've got a system that works great for you, then that's great. I mean, that we'd be the first ones to say keep using that. What we find though is that someone might decide, hey, QuickBooks, we love QuickBooks, so we're going to keep using it, or Sage 50, or some of the entry-level products. Again, they work awesome. They're excellent for small business. But what we find is that they often try to push the limits and try to add more locations or push the user limits and just add a lot more functionality. And as much as they still may be able to get by with it, but really what they're doing is if you actually start to break down where they're actually keeping track of their data and their systems, all of a sudden they have a ton of spreadsheets all over the place. So they're not running QuickBooks anymore, they're running Excel. And you've got a whole bunch of people with each coming to a meeting that has different data because they're keeping track of their own data in Excel, which is, lots of risks and lots of dysfunctions around that. But that's what we see with small businesses. You get by with whatever you can to start to build your business. But when you start to see cracks and that kind of stuff, that might be a sign that you might maybe need to look at something else. I don't know, Sam, can you think of any examples on the small side?
Actually, if when you say that, yeah, because I think the biggest, whether you're small, mid-market, or enterprise, I think enterprise, they've usually got it kind of dialed down. I think they understand business solutions and what they can do. I think what goes hand in hand with that, and why people gravitate to things like QuickBooks and try to leverage QuickBooks and then use Excel sheets or bolting on segregated products and systems. Then you're facing an issue with data entry, but it comes back to accounting and how operations drives accounting. And I think that's something that needs to be strongly demystified, is that ERPs are no longer an audit trail. There are some that are still in that mentality, but there are so many that are really created to drive operations, enhance operations, to streamline accounting, because there is no accounting without operations. You can have operations without accounting, but I mean, that's not very legal, but that's what drives accounting, is operations. I think that's probably one of the biggest things, right? Too many people drive decisions from a financial standpoint and they don't look at the big picture, right? And that's another way and reason technology can be dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, go ahead, Marie.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking that's exactly it, is you're when you're a small company, maybe QuickBooks was big enough for you and it did everything you needed, but then over time, all it did was your accounting, and you added in timesheets separately, you added in your CRM separately, you were tracking inventory in a spreadsheet. All of those different things just seem to as you grow, you're outgrowing the solution, but people don't look at it as that's something that they need to do.
They just keep duct taping, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's say that you do take a step back and you go, hey, you know, even if a business owner is really assessing the need for doing something, but we just talked about maybe getting a solution too big. So maybe what are the dangers of if you do take a step back and then try to put something maybe too big in place? What are some of the specific dangers of that?
Oh, I would see you end up with a system that can be too complicated. There's too many features and too many things that your staff have to learn, and they're not really using them. So you're overspending and getting features that you're not using. It also then just overall the cost. You're having a higher either entry level or ongoing cost to keep that bigger system going when you could get by with something that's a little bit more mid-sized or right-sized for you.
Yeah.
Well, and that kind of comes back to, like, I mean, the reason this, for instance, this company I'm referring to that's up in Edmonton, that they have 1,500 to 1,800 employees. They're growing like crazy, but their mentality was that we're going to buy SAP S/4HANA, which, I mean, now is coming down hard into the mid-market. We see that. But, they bought the huge, big beast because they think that they need it, right? They bought technology just because, they're like, oh, we're so big. And that kind of comes back to egos, right? A lot of businesses will say, oh, I'm too small or I'm too big. Either way, you kind of swing that pendulum. You can't have that driving a decision. It's about finding the right product, right product, the right fit. And, when you deal with those egos and you're dealing with, oh, we're going to buy technology because we're big enough and we're going to just buy it just because. Well, now you've just sunk a lot of millions of dollars into something that you really didn't need.
I think Steve, and that's a good point. And when you get into the technology, just because, I think Steve, you can maybe relate a couple more examples of, someone maybe gravitating to a shiny object that can drop it in and solve all the problems. So maybe share a couple examples around that.
That is my favorite color.
Yeah, over the years, that's what I've seen a number of times. Is you've got owners, and the owners of the company aren't always technologically, I don't know what you call it, on the ball with things, but they're very good at their business. They know their business very, very well. And then you'll get people, they'll hear something on TV or the radio, or they'll see something online and say, hey, this is the new thing. And they'll just go to their IT department and say, we need that. They don't know why they need it. They don't know what problem they're going to fix with it, but it's the new thing that other people are using, so they need to get it as well.
Do you think that has anything to do with, for instance, wording? The way modules or products can be named or worded or anything. Do you think that is the reason?
Definitely. We've had that before where companies will say, hey, I've heard there's a module called warehouse management. And they say, I just want to turn it on because that'll help me. They don't know what it is. They don't know what it's going to do. And they don't really have a problem with their warehouse. But they just hear the term and say, yeah, that sounds great. I should get that.
So what, you're saying you can't just get the module, drop it in, and all of a sudden, boom, we got warehouse management. Everything works perfectly.
Well, probably not, but sometimes that does work, but not always. You have to be a little more careful.
I think a couple of the examples I might think of around terms, to your point, Samantha, is, we've heard of AI or artificial intelligence or ML, machine learning. And I think business owners might go, or blockchain, things like that. Business owners might go, hey, this sounds really cool. I think this can help our business. Let's get that. Well, and I think that's a good thought, but just getting that, I mean, AI and machine learning, there's a whole community around that's starting to emerge and starting to deliver value for businesses, but it's not just something you can drop in. But let me ask another question. I think we just had we were on the Acumatica is a ERP product, and they just had that we represent, just to be clear on that, but they released had a product launch yesterday for a version called 2020 R2. So when we think about
ask me how excited I am for it.
well, I think that's going to be my point, because I think that we saw a lot of cool features. And we just talked about, you know, the dangers of adopting a feature because it looks great and, you know, technology just because, but maybe help us maybe share a couple examples of some of those cool features, but then also positioning it around, you know, to how do we not just adopt that for the sake of adopting it, and how might one kind of then evaluate that and see if it's appropriate for the business. But yeah,
I'll start. I'll start. There's a lot of things I got out of that launch yesterday, and I borderline cried because it was so emotional. It was just, I was just hit so close to home about it. The one thing that really, really stuck with me was lead creation and how they've embedded that address lookup in there. So instead, you know, they had a lead that came through a website that auto-populated, but they noticed that there was no address. As a salesperson, people in sales, they know how big of a pain in the ass it is to just get anything populated, copying and pasting all these different addresses. So the one thing that I see the value in for any salesperson is if you create a lead, or if it comes through the form, they didn't type in their address, you just type in the address lookup, type in the company name, and boom, it populates right into the system. And I'm going to say that's going to save you probably between 30 to 45 seconds. Now that's not a lot, but if you're doing that, you know, 30 times a day, well, you almost just saved yourself, what, like 27 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes of time?
Well, I think that, yeah, I mean,
that's a meeting.
I could debate that and go, well, you know, let's say that we get 2 or 3 meetings or leads a day like that, and well, that's only saved us 2.5 minutes. But I think the real benefit there is that salespeople inherently always have, you know, they'll kick up a problem in using a CRM, but if there's things that we can do to help them work more efficiently and just kind of take, whether we take the excuses away or just help them be super efficient, that really helps the business. And all we're trying to do is help salespeople go out and get leads, and then let's make it easy for them to kind of log that. And so I think there's a benefit there for sure. What are some of the other, I don't know, kind of features that we might say, that looked great, and then how might we evaluate it in our business to make it kind of work best for us?
Yeah, well, I definitely saw a number of things too that I was really impressed with, and a few of them were exactly like you said, Murray. They're things that make your life using the system and make your day-to-day work easier. So there's little things like a history. So you're logged into the system.
Love that.
You click on the history button and you can see every screen, every document that you've opened in the last 30 days. And so if you know that you're doing some work and then somebody called you and distracted you and you got doing something else for them, you don't have to try and remember where you were. You just hit the history and it gives you a list of all of them. It's even broken down by functional area. So if you want to look something up, say I was working on an AR document. I can click on the history, click on AR, and there's the last documents I've been working on in the system. Those are the kinds of things that help you on a day-to-day. The other side of things, and don't get me wrong, they're pretty cool. They added in things like quality management control. So when you receive inventory in, you can have steps that go through. Maybe it has to have a verification or testing process. That's great, but it may not be right for everybody. You don't want to just say, hey, I want to turn that on because that's the new system, the new version.
Well, same thing with the POS system too that they've introduced now embedded, right? So, you know, that's just added value. And does it, you know, is there a limitation currently? Well, no, it just shows you the innovation, I think, and the research and development going into that product on a semi-annual basis.
I think that's a good point there.
Good. Yeah, if they fit your business and point of sale is something you need, then great.
Yeah,
it's there. It's awesome to turn it on, but just because it's there doesn't mean you should be activating it.
Yeah, I think it is. It does talk to maybe not the specific things, but while there's a lot of interesting things that we might find, but it's the mind share or the path or the strategic direction that company might do, and that you can align yourself and be confident that that's where it's a good place to be long term. But if we kind of switch gears, maybe I'll ask you this, Samantha. So we've talked about some dangers, we've talked about some, you know, kind of risks and things like that, and we've talked about some shiny objects on particular software and some of the risks and benefits. Well, if we're a small business owner, how do we go about and manage this? If we have a salesperson that says, I need that feature to add a lead address, and how do we go about and evaluate whether that's something that we should consider or not? So if we kind of switch gears and go, okay, how do we mitigate it? How do we deal with this?
Well, I think that that kind of comes back to software selection, right? And finding a better piece of software, whether or not, it might be Salesforce or it might be HubSpot or it might be something completely different. You're going to have a conversation with someone who thoroughly understands what software can do and is also capable of. But there's always that problem, and this is something, right, we always talk about, is that bias versus trust. How do you know which is the different, right? When you have an employee, let's say it's IT or a CFO, there's a difference between a biased opinion and a trusted opinion. If you're sitting there and you're, saying, oh, I'm going to implement this system because, John Doe working down the street said he implemented this and he manufactures pop cans and we sell jeans online. It's not, you can't implement the same thing John Doe does. So I think that you need to have some sort of a trusted advisor, and that's sort of where we come in, right? And I saw a great post on LinkedIn today about partnership between software providers and customers. The second that we start treating each other both equally as partners, driving this decision, making this happen together, that's when you start really feeling and then the benefits of a business solution. So I think that's another aspect, but trust versus bias. How do you, there's so many reasons, and I know we got 8 minutes left, but I know this is something that we need to cover.
Well, I think that, and to kind of frame that even kind of further from that, bias is right there itself. That's a danger, that if you do find someone that has a bias towards, you mentioned like the company making pop cans versus jeans. Well, maybe you've got a software that just does the great job of doing pop cans, but it doesn't really work so well with jeans. But if your trusted advisor only knows the pop can industry, then he's probably going to recommend whatever kind of solutions that they have. So how do you, that is certainly a risk. Even if you think that there's a person or a company that you trust, are they the right partner? But how do you maybe properly, kind of assess trust versus bias?
I say history, track record.
Yeah.
Exploring, if you're working with someone who has strictly ever worked with Microsoft products, they're going to naturally have a bias. They know how the product works, and they might naturally gravitate to something Microsoft based, and they'll pitch it and sell it to the company. They'll say, oh, I know this product, I'll just help with training. Even though it might not be the best fit. I think that's definitely the biggest one. Or even what that company did that bought the Ferrari, girlfriend or somebody said to the CFO or the controller, you got to buy this, is great, you got to do it. And that's how they picked an ERP system.
Well, I think that, you think about SAP, I love their slogan, the best run. And what that's alluding to is to say, hey, I want to be the best in my industry. And so, hey, if I want to get there, I have to buy SAP. So that's a great message. But then that's a bias right then and there. So SAP might be the greatest fit for that. It does fit excellent in many companies, but it may not be the right fit for that. So I think to your point is that if you start to see maybe your advisor is just recommending just Microsoft or just SAP or something else, that's probably an indication that there is a bias. And of course, if they're maybe throwing a few options on the table, then that might be an indication that they're more objective.
And I think, there's also other things as well, like certifications, to check their track record. What have they implemented? How many things are they exploring? And, I guess another thing we didn't really talk about is IT departments, right? Obviously the cloud, and there's a couple of different variations of cloud, and we should most certainly have our variation of it. And, there's private cloud, sitting in a data center, and then there's web-based cloud. Like there are a lot of different variations, right? So for us, from our standpoint, we don't really worry about IT management and server management because that's something that Acumatica, the developer of the product, the people who know what makes that product tick and how it's going to enhance security and standardize it across the board. That's another thing. But, do you think IT people might be trending towards and gravitating towards certain products because of, job security?
Yeah, that was definitely a case I saw in the past. It's getting a little better. More and more IT guys are starting to realize that cloud is a good way to go. But again, you mentioned different types of cloud. Well, is it in the cloud where it's backed up and redundant and it's always there 99.99 whatever percent of the time? Or is it just an offsite server? I still have a server, but it's just not in my building anymore. It's somewhere else. So you still have to look at that. But that is one of the things we ran into in the past is IT departments saying, you know what, if I outsource all of this stuff, I'm out of a job. So do they adapt or do they try and convince you that you need to stay in-house?
Well, I mean, I think just, also the terminology they use, right? I mean, we spoke about this a couple weeks ago when I had an encounter. I was speaking with someone about products, right? And they had just implemented Microsoft Business Central, which is great. Apparently was very successful. But he used the term, and it was a company about 230 and 40 employees or so. And he said, "Oh, well, we all know that Exapta would be the Cadillac of any system, right?" And you hear the word Exapta and you're like, wow, well, that doesn't really exist anymore, right? I mean, it's been reconfigured, redesigned, but you hear the word Exapta, right? I bet you that hit some memories for you back a couple years ago.
Yeah, it was, I think, back in the day, it was, I think by a lot of measures, it was, the best product for a certain, kind of segment of the market. But the point being is, that brand name doesn't exist anymore. The product, under the layers still exists fundamentally, but the brand name doesn't exist. So if you have a advisor maybe touting brands that don't exist, and maybe with a couple of questions or a little bit of research, you might go, that sounds like there might be a bias there.
Mm-hmm.
How about so then maybe the last point would be then if you do find someone you trust, how should one go about maybe looking at business technology? And I think in the couple minutes we have, I think that obviously it will still always need to be about functionality. So big, small, new, old, you have to find a system, whether it's devices or a global enterprise-wide set of systems. They have to meet your business functionality. But maybe quickly, what are some good ways to go about and assess that?
Oh, the main one I think of is don't go out looking for a demo of a system so that they can show you what's really cool in their system and have them convince you. You don't want to see that because a generic demo just shows you that means that the provider is showing you what they want to show you, and they're going to only show you the cool things. What you want to do is you want to start off with your pain points and where your opportunities for improvement are. Why are you looking to get a new system?
It comes back to the partnership model.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Are they trying to sell you a system, or are they trying to help you make your business better? And so those are the first couple of things that I always look at is don't start off with a product demo because, anybody can make it look shiny and cool.
Yeah, I would say open-mindedness, always go into it with an open mind, avoid biases as much as you possibly can, explore innovative technologies, ensure you're checking product roadmaps, try to focus on streamlining and consolidating as much into one platform as you possibly can instead of bolting on add-on after add-on after add-on, and definitely make sure that accounting is involved, but it's not the be on and end all, right? These systems are now operational. They manage operations with streamlined accounting.
And as an accountant, I would fully agree with that. Again, the business operations need to drive the financials, and that just allows it to be more efficient and focus on what you're doing. The thing I would conclude on is that any kind of technology decisions shouldn't be a point in time thing. You shouldn't just go grab that shiny object and press a button or drop it in and expect everything to magically change. You do have to look at your business processes and look at the people that are a part of it, but you also have to continue to assess. So the continuous improvement is always going to be really important in the ongoing success of any of this stuff.
Yeah. Well, it comes up to 2:30 today Mountain Time, so make sure you register for next week's podcast. We have Dean McKeon from Queen's University joining us to talk about analytics. So I know that Murray is going to be very excited about that. We as a company definitely are. So he'll be joining us next week for a 30-minute podcast, so be sure to check us out then. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.